we have eliminated 2 more teams from the IPL. 2 teams made the playoffs, but they did not make the final. Shall we look through the ashes to see why and what happened and the what have yous? The same rules apply for all the team maps, that the bowling is on the right. So you want to be on the inside over here, and the batting is on the left. So you want to be outside of these markers here. But by now, you've probably stumbled across one of my team maps, and you get it. So let us look at the first exit from a team from the playoffs here, and that was the Lucknow Super Giants. So let's get rid of Mumbai and have a look at what shape we have here. I must admit, I never quite fully bought into this team, but their record kept pulling me back. And when I brought up their regular season stats on this map, I felt even more meh about them. They're an exceptional bowling team, as you can see here, except not at the start. In fact, not even a little bit at the start. That is a hideous record of bowling in the power play. No one bowler took more than 3 wickets. Avesh Khan has 0 wickets from 7-2 balls during the regular season in the bowling power play, for instance. In the final, they used their spinners up top, which I think tells you that they'd kind of given up on their seamers. However, in the middle, you can see that's almost exactly the opposite. Ravi Bishnoi took 14 mil-overs wickets, and Krunal Pandya was really handy as well. Even Mark Wood and Avesh Khan took a bunch in this section. And because of that, absolutely no one could score on them as well. They were tripping over wickets. And you can see it happens again at the end. A lot of wickets at the death and a very good death bowling economy as well. There was Naveen Al-Haq and Yash Thakur taking over in this bit, but the economy at the end is very good considering, the fact that they haven't got a single player out in the entire power play. I mean, I think that's the most important thing. They give themselves such a disadvantage to start with that it's actually quite a turnaround after that point. They are bad at batting up the top. A lot of this is obviously the fact that KL Rahul was not always around. And also Deepak Hooda was absolutely terrible. In fact, when Krunal Pandya batted in the power play, he also failed up top. So there's a lot of wickets here that you probably wouldn't expect to happen that much going into the future. I mean, those 2 would not be in as much if KL Rahul was actually in the side. But the combination of everything meant that they also batted slow, and it was just a bit of a stinker. From there, you'd see that they're much better in the middle. Stoinis and Puran certainly carry them in this period, and because of that, they're pretty solid here. They're not fantastic or anything like that, but after their start, they've certainly made a bit of a comeback. However, at the death, they still lose a lot of wickets, but they have maintained at least a par strike rate here. When I had a look at it, it was just a lot of different players chipping in. So I think that holds up better. You don't really want one player to be great. You probably want a bunch of players to be good, and that's more repeatable for the following season. However, having talked you through all this, does this look like a team that was a top 3 side? I mean, they won the games, don't get me wrong, but you have to respect that. But you also have to look at this and think to yourself, maybe they weren't quite as good as their win total made out. And of course, they lost the one that matters, which is maybe more important again. So what's next? There is absolutely no doubt they will need someone to take wickets up front. Avesh Khan can't be this bad again, but they are going to need at least one more bowler who can take regular wickets up at the front. I am interested in Yudhvir Singh, but I think they need something a little bit more solid as well. I would also like it if they had another top order player in their setup. May has had a good year and KL is obviously good, but I wonder if they need more insurance rather than just those 2. But overall, their squad doesn't bother me as much as this team map does. But let's just now have a look at Mumbai, and we can get rid of the Super Giants here the way that they were gotten rid of in the first round of the playoffs. Obviously, we need to look beyond the latest game where they seem to give up all their batters through a tragically hilarious set of circumstances. Should bum padding be banned in cricket? Stay to the end of the video to find out. But before that, let's just have a look at what they actually did. You can see that they are just very close to being a par team all the way through the game. I actually love how uniform this looks. I'm not sure I've ever seen a team that just looks so almost exactly bang on average like this before. However, there is no zone where they are elite. There is also no zone where they suck ass. It just is a fairly symmetrical team maps, where they are slightly better with the bat than they are with the ball. And while this doesn't scream finalist, it also does suggest that while they might have felt lucky at times, the whole getting Delhi in that must-win game early on, RCB shitting the bed, and the 5-for-5 game, when you look at this, there aren't many weaknesses. They're a really balanced team. Obviously slightly better at batting than bowling, but they're not that great at batting and they're not that bad at bowling. But let's have a look when they've got the ball in their hand anyway. One place they struggle is taking wickets early on. You can see that Jofra being half an archer and no Bumrah is the biggest issue here. Behrendorff actually had an okay season, but not quite the impact they would have loved. Their middle bowling is a little bit better. even if they're not clearly that good at it. And consider this, they were as good as they could be in the middle with a 103-year-old spinner who doesn't play IPL anymore and having a season where he took an absolute buttload of wickets. In fact, he now has the third most wickets in IPL history, despite the fact that he was, well, completely washed coming in. And you wonder how much of that was inspired by Mumbai or just dumb luck. Either way, Piyashala kept their middle overs okay almost on his own. The death is probably their worst period here, which makes sense because of the lack of wickets early on. And remember that Jofra and Jasprit didn't play, or even when Jofra did play, he kind of didn't play. Even with the amount of wickets that they had taken all the way through, Jofra and Jasprit would have struggled in full form in this period for them. And considering that they were poor, but they weren't as bad as they could have been. You can see here that this is maybe their best period. They don't lose wickets at the top. This is probably their biggest blip on the entire map. But you can also see that the runs per over are not that great. So they don't really cash in on the fact they're not losing wickets. But they also don't lose wickets again in the middle. Again though, you can see that they don't really cash in on that either. So far they're keeping all these wickets in hand, but it's not really coming up on a runs per over basis. Obviously in the middle, Sky is a huge part of that as well. But it also comes from the top order players not losing that many wickets. And at the death, they still do not lose any wickets. They're just a very good team at conserving wickets all the way through the game. But again, it's not really showing up in the runs per over. What's the point of keeping all these wickets if you're not going to smash the hell out of the ball occasionally? Especially at the death. They should actually be scoring a lot faster than they are. I think the first thing I would say to this team is that they have been slightly overperforming this year. Because they've had good results, especially with younger players, there is a chance that thinks that they have developed slightly quicker than they actually have. Whereas in actual fact, I think just a little bit of luck went their way at the right time. Because I think the absolute worst thing for Mumbai Indians right now would be to look at everything that happened and actually think that they were one Tim David drop of Shubman Gill away from being in the final. The first eliminator was just one of those games, and RCB probably should have been in the finals as well. That doesn't mean they shouldn't view this as a positive season, just one where they still have a lot to fix. And when having a look at that, the first thing I'd be wondering is why their batting hasn't capitalized on the fact that they barely lost a wicket all season. Something about that is off for me, and I couldn't even pinpoint it in the numbers exactly what was wrong, except for the fact that they don't go out and they don't push very hard. Kind of rather they lose more wickets and push harder and end up with the same amount of runs, if that makes any sense. They still clearly need a better spinner, or at least someone better to pair with Piyush Chawla if he somehow does all of this again. Do they also need another gun overseas fast bowler in case Jasprit/Jofra is injured again? Which, to be fair, at this point is just more likely than not, right? But my biggest problem for them was their depth. If you look at their substitutes versus Gujarat's substitutes in the playoff, it just looks like these two teams are completely different when it comes to the actual depth of quality in their squads. But the major media narrative, I suppose, is going to be Rohit Sharma. His last plus season as an IPL opener was in 2016. Now, we've had Mohit and Ajinkya and Piyush all have incredible comebacks this year alone. But do you want that to be the best chance of you getting fast runs out of your man on top next year? I'm not sure they do. That's a tough call as well. Anyway, that is us today, and the next game we'll be talking about, of course, will be the final and the finalists. So please like, subscribe, do all those sorts of things that you need to do, notify yourself, or put a comment in about the final or these teams, because you know we will be back again to make this kind of a beautiful map for you.